$5,000, that's what it cost to ruin a date. Emma needed the money desperately, a broken laptop, mounting bills, and pride she could no longer afford. The job seemed simple: show up, be unbearable, make him never want to see her again. But when she walked into that restaurant and locked eyes with Jack, something shifted. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. And in that moment, Emma realized she had just made the most expensive mistake of her life. If you're listening to this while driving, working, or just trying to feel something real again, leave a comment telling me where you're hearing this from. And if this story is hitting different, hit that subscribe button. You'll want to hear what comes next. Emma's apartment smelled like burnt coffee and defeat. She sat cross-legged on her worn couch, staring at the black screen of her laptop, the one that had finally given up on her, just like everything else seemed to lately. 3 days. She had 3 days to deliver a complete brand identity package to a client who'd already pushed her deadline twice. 3 days, and no way to work. The repair shop quoted her $800, money she didn't have. Money she wouldn't have for at least another month, maybe 2 if her freelance clients kept paying late. Her phone buzzed. Riley, again. Did you see the link I sent you? Emma hadn't. She'd been too busy calculating how many meals she could skip to afford a used laptop, or whether her pride could survive asking her parents for money again. She opened the message thread, a screenshot of some kind of Craigslist ad, but stranger, more specific. Actress needed for 3-hour performance. Must be willing to follow explicit character direction. Compensation $5,000. Immediate availability required. Emma read it twice, then a third time. $5,000 for 3 hours. That was more than she made in 2 months of good freelance work. It was enough to fix her laptop, pay rent, maybe even sleep without that knot in her stomach for once. Riley, this is obviously a scam. I called. It's legit. Well, weird, but legit. Some woman answered, very professional, very intense. What kind of performance? She wouldn't say over the phone, but Emma, it's $5,000 for 3 hours. Even if it's weird, even if you have to wear a banana costume and sing show tunes, isn't it worth a conversation? Emma looked at her blank laptop screen, at the stack of unpaid bills on her counter, at the creative life she'd imagined for herself when she graduated, now reduced to instant ramen and anxiety. Send me the number. The woman's name was Veronica. She had the kind of voice that made you sit up straighter, sharp, polished, used to being obeyed. They met at a cafe in the Loop, one of those places where a cappuccino costs more than Emma usually spent on dinner. Veronica was exactly what Emma expected. Immaculate, cold, beautiful in a way that felt weaponized. She wore white, everything white, as if daring the world to leave a mark. "You're younger than I hoped," Veronica said, not as an insult, just a fact she was already calculating around. "I'm 23, and desperate, I assume. Otherwise you wouldn't be here." Emma's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Desperation had brought her here. There was no point pretending otherwise. Veronica slid a folder across the table. Inside, a photo of a man, profile details, a restaurant reservation confirmation. "His name is Jack. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. at Everly. You will go in my place." Emma stared at the photo. The man was handsome in an understated way. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. Mid-30s maybe. There was something guarded about him, even in a photograph. "Why can't you go?" "Because I don't want to. And because he needs to stop pursuing me. I've declined him twice. He doesn't take hints." "So you want me to, what? Tell him you're not interested?" Veronica's smile was thin and sharp. "I want you to be so unbearable that he never wants to see me again. Be crude, be desperate. Talk about marriage on the first date. Mention your 5 cats. Your ex-boyfriend who still lives with you. Be everything a man like Jack would run from." Emma felt something uncomfortable twist in her stomach. That seems cruel. That seems like $5,000 for 3 hours of bad acting. Veronica leaned forward. "I saw your portfolio, Emma. I know you need this. Your laptop is broken. You're 2 months behind on rent. Your biggest client just cut their budget. Am I wrong?" She wasn't wrong. That was the problem. Emma looked at the photo again. Jack. He had kind eyes, she thought. Or maybe that was just her projecting, trying to make this feel less like a betrayal of someone she'd never met. What if he recognizes that I'm not you? He's seen one photo of me, filtered and 5 years old. He won't know. Just follow the script, Emma. 3 hours. Then you walk away, and we both get what we need. Veronica placed an envelope on the table. Emma could see the bills inside, crisp and real. Half now, half when you're done. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she reached for it. She thought about her laptop, about her career, about the difference between compromising and surviving. She took the envelope. What should I wear? Veronica's smile widened. Oh, I'll send you something special. Trust me, you'll be unforgettable. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the man in the photo, about the role she'd agreed to play, about the strange feeling that she'd just made a choice she couldn't unmake. Outside her window, Chicago glittered with 1,000 lives being lived. Tomorrow, she'd step into someone else's. Just for 3 hours, she told herself. What could possibly go wrong? The package arrived at noon. Emma opened it with the kind of dread usually reserved for medical test results. Inside, a leopard print blouse with ruffles that seemed to multiply the longer she looked at it, leather pants 2 sizes too small, and shoes bedazzled with what she desperately hoped were fake crystals. There was also a note, written in Veronica's precise handwriting. Commit to the character. The makeup should be theatrical. Hair. Bigger is better. Remember, you're trying to scare him away, not seduce him. V. Emma held up the blouse. It caught the light like a disco ball having an identity crisis. Oh, God, she whispered to her empty apartment. 6 hours later, Emma stood outside Everly, barely recognizing her own reflection in the restaurant's glass doors. Her face was a masterpiece of excess. Eyeshadow in 3 conflicting shades of purple, blush applied with what must have been a paint roller, lips lined so far outside their natural borders, she looked perpetually surprised. Her hair, teased and sprayed into submission, added 3 inches to her height. The leopard print blouse clashed magnificently with her personality. She looked like a caricature, which was, she supposed, exactly the point. 3 hours, $5,000. You can do this. She pushed through the doors. Everly was the kind of restaurant where even the air felt expensive. Low lighting, piano music, drifting from somewhere invisible, tables spaced far enough apart that conversations remained private. Everyone inside looked like they belonged in a magazine spread about understated wealth. And then there was Emma, dressed like a fever dream. The hostess's smile faltered for only a fraction of a second. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? Jack, Emma realized she didn't know his last name. Table for 2. 8 p.m.? Ah, yes, Mr. Morrison's table. Right this way. Emma followed, acutely aware of every eye that tracked her movement through the restaurant. The leather pants squeaked with each step. The crystals on her shoes caught the candlelight and threw tiny rainbows across the walls. And then she saw him. Jack Morrison sat at a corner table, reading something on his phone. He wore a dark suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body, which it probably had. When he looked up, Emma's breath caught. The photo hadn't done him justice. He was beautiful in the way old buildings are beautiful, all clean lines and quiet strength. His eyes were grey or maybe blue, she couldn't tell in this light. What she could tell was that they were intelligent, assessing, the kind of eyes that didn't miss much. Those eyes swept over her now, taking in every disastrous detail of her appearance. She waited for the recoil, the poorly disguised horror, the polite excuse that would end this before it began. Instead, Jack stood. He smiled. Veronica, he said, and his voice was lower than she expected, rough at the edges like he didn't use it often. You look vibrant. Emma's carefully prepared opening line died in her throat. She'd expected disgust, maybe pity, not amusement, not curiosity. Yes. I believe in self-expression. She sat down before her knees could betray her. You must be Jack. Guilty. He settled back into his chair, with the easy confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in a room. I'm glad you decided to come. I was starting to think you'd keep declining forever. Stick to the script, Emma. Make him run. Well, you know what they say, third time's the charm. Speaking of threes, did I mention I believe in the rule of three? 3 dates before marriage, 3 kids. I already have names picked out. Sage, Meridian, and Thaddeus. Do you like those names? I think Thaddeus is coming back. She delivered it exactly as she'd rehearsed, with the manic energy Veronica had requested. Jack didn't blink. Thaddeus is bold, he said. Though I might argue that 3 dates before marriage doesn't leave much room for getting to know each other. Oh, but that's the beauty of intuition. I can tell everything I need to know about a person in 3 seconds. It's a gift, like psychic, but more specific. She leaned forward conspiratorially, nearly knocking over her water glass. For example, I can tell you're left-handed. You had a dog growing up and you secretly hate these fancy restaurants, but come anyway because it's expected. His expression shifted. Something flickered behind those careful eyes. Surprise, maybe recognition. 2 out of 3, he said quietly. I'm ambidextrous, actually. But yes to the dog. And yes, he glanced around the pristine restaurant. To the rest. Emma felt something dangerous stir in her chest. No. Don't get curious. Don't make this real. See? Psychic. She forced her voice higher, brighter. I also sense you're an Aries. Very alpha. I love alpha males. My ex-boyfriend was super alpha. He's actually still living with me while he finds himself. Very evolved of us, don't you think? Most exes can't maintain that level of mature cohabitation. This should do it. This should send him running. Jack picked up his wine glass, studying her over the rim. And you're comfortable with that arrangement? Oh, totally. Brandon needs his space to work through his chakras. He's between jobs right now, by choice, obviously. He's actually here with me spiritually. She tapped her temple. We're very connected energetically. The waiter appeared, reciting specials Emma couldn't process because she was too busy watching Jack's face, waiting for the moment he'd make an excuse and leave. It didn't come. Instead, after they ordered, Jack leaned back in his chair and said, Tell me about your work, Veronica. What do you do when you're not reading energies? And there it was, genuine interest in his voice. Emma faltered. This wasn't in the script. I'm in design, graphic design. Idiot. That's your life, not Veronica's. But Jack's expression shifted again, something lighting up behind his eyes. Really? What kind of design? Brand identity, mostly. Visual storytelling. The words came easier now because they were true. Helping companies figure out who they are and how to show that to the world. That sounds... Jack paused, choosing his word carefully. Meaningful. For a moment, Emma forgot she was wearing leopard print and theatrical makeup. For a moment she was just herself, talking about the thing she loved most. Then she remembered. The character, the job, the $5,000. Oh, but it's just a side thing, she said quickly. My real passion is breeding Pomeranians. I have 7. Want to see pictures? She reached for her phone, but Jack's hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching hers. Maybe later, he said. His voice had gone soft. I'd rather hear more about the design work. Emma looked at his hand, suspended in the space between them, looked at his face, open in a way that made her chest hurt. This man was supposed to run. Instead, he was leaning closer. The next 2 weeks became a strange kind of torture. Veronica called the morning after that first dinner, her voice sharp with displeasure. He asked to see you again. Emma had been hoping she'd never hear from Veronica again, that Jack would have woken up, reconsidered, decided that leopard print and fake exes were deal-breakers after all. I did everything you asked, Emma said, defensive. I was unbearable. Apparently not unbearable enough. He's intrigued. Veronica said the word like it tasted bitter. He wants a second date tomorrow night. Then you go. I can't. It's too late for that now. If I show up looking nothing like you did, he'll know something is wrong. You started this, Emma, and I'm paying you to finish it. A pause. Another 5,000, same character, make it worse this time. Emma should have said no, should have returned the money, apologized, walked away from the whole mess. But her laptop was fixed. Her rent was paid. And somewhere in the back of her mind, A small, dangerous part of her wanted to see him again, just to understand why he hadn't run. That's what she told herself anyway. Date 2. A jazz club in River North. Emma arrived in a sequined tracksuit and platform sneakers, her hair in pigtails that hadn't been age-appropriate since middle school. She'd prepared new material, stories about her collection of decorative spoons, her opinions on astrology, her plans to open a combination yoga studio and taxidermy workshop. Jack was waiting outside, dressed down this time in dark jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, more accessible. When he saw her, that same almost smile played at his lips. "Veronica," he said, "you continue to surprise me." They found a small table near the back, where the music was loud enough to make conversation intimate, requiring them to lean close to hear each other. Emma launched into her prepared monologue about Mercury retrograde and its effect on her ex-boyfriend's cryptocurrency investments. But Jack interrupted her. "What's your favorite film?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "Your favorite film. Everyone has one." Emma's mind raced. What would Veronica's character say? Something terrible, probably. Something that would make him cringe. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was Casablanca. Jack's eyebrows rose. "Really? I know, it's old-fashioned. Everyone always wants me to say something cool and contemporary, but..." She caught herself. This wasn't her. This was the job. "I mean, I also love, Sharknado. Very underrated cinematic experience." But it was too late. She'd seen recognition flash across his face, interest that went deeper than the surface. "Casablanca is a perfect film," Jack said quietly. "The sacrifice, the timing, the idea that love doesn't always mean keeping someone." He paused. "Play it once, Sam, for old time's sake." "Play it, Sam," Emma corrected without thinking. "Everyone misquotes it. Bergman never says, 'play it again.'" The moment the words left her mouth, she knew she'd made a mistake. The real Emma had broken through the character, and Jack had noticed. She could see it in the way his gaze sharpened, in the slight tilt of his head. "You know it well," he observed. My ex made me watch it, during his classic cinema phase, between his cryptocurrency phase and his current chakra phase." The lie felt heavier than the others, maybe because it was coating something true. Jack didn't push. Instead, he said, "There's a revival theatre showing it next week, Wednesday night. Would you want to go?" Emma's throat tightened. "To watch Casablanca with you. Is that so strange?" "Yes," she wanted to say, "because I'm lying to you, because I'm being paid to make you hate me, because every moment I spend with you makes this worse." "No," she whispered. "It's not strange." Date 3. Coffee at a bookstore cafe in Wicker Park. Emma had toned down the costume at Veronica's grudging permission. He's clearly not responding to the visual cues, so focus on behavioral red flags, but kept the essential absurdity. She talked about her plans to get matching tattoos with her ex, her belief in healing crystals, her idea to start a multi-level marketing business selling essential oils. Jack listened to all of it with the same patient attention he'd give to a fascinating puzzle. And then he asked about her family. Emma told him about her parents, her childhood in Michigan, her kid brother who was better at everything than she'd ever been. Real things, true things, things she wrapped in the character's manic energy but couldn't quite disguise. Jack told her about growing up in Boston, an only child, parents who loved him but didn't quite understand him, a father who'd wanted him to be a surgeon, a mother who'd wanted him to be happy. "I'm not sure I managed either," he said with a sad smile. "What do you do?" Emma asked. She realized she'd never asked before. Veronica had said he was successful, but not specifically what that meant. "I work in tech, software development." He said it dismissively, like it wasn't important. "It's fine, pays well, not exactly saving lives." Emma wanted to ask more, but the character wouldn't care. So she pivoted to a story about her imaginary Pomeranian's digestive issues. But when they left the cafe, walking aimlessly through the neighborhood, their hands brushed, once, twice. The third time, Jack's fingers caught hers. Emma's breath stopped. She should pull away, should stay in character, should remember what this was. Instead, she held on. They walked half a block in silence, hands intertwined, before Jack said, "You're different than I expected." Different how? More real, even when you're trying not to be. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. He suspected. He must suspect. But he was still holding her hand. "Everyone's different than expected," she said softly. "Once you look close enough. Is that why you wear all this?" His free hand gestured vaguely at her outfit. "So people don't look too close?" The question hit too near the truth. Emma pulled her hand away, suddenly overwhelmed. "I should go," she said. "Veronica, I really should go." She walked away quickly, before he could see her face, before the tears could fall, before she could do something truly stupid like tell him everything. Behind her, Jack called out, "Wednesday, Casablanca. I'll wait for you outside the theater at 7. Emma didn't turn around, but she knew already that she would go. Jack Morrison hadn't built a successful company by ignoring patterns. And Veronica, or whoever she really was a pattern he couldn't stop analyzing. The morning after their bookstore date, he sat in his office on the 43rd floor of the Morrison Tech building, ostensibly reviewing quarterly reports. Instead, he was thinking about the way she'd corrected his Casablanca quote, the genuine passion in her voice when she talked about design, the flash of something raw and honest in her eyes before she'd hidden it behind talk of Pomeranians and essential oils. Something wasn't right. Or rather, something was very right, buried beneath something very wrong. Jack pulled up his phone and scrolled to the photos from Veronica's social media, the ones that had prompted his initial interest. A beautiful woman, polished and aloof, posing at charity galas and art openings. Her profile said she worked in pharmaceutical sales, lived in Gold Coast, had gone to Yale. The woman he'd been meeting looked nothing like these photos. Different bone structure, different height even, different everything. He'd noticed it the first night, but had been too intrigued by the discrepancy to mention it, and with each date, the mystery had only deepened. Who was she? And why was she pretending to be someone else? Jack made a call. "Marcus, I need you to look into something for me." Marcus Chen had been Jack's head of security for 5 years, a former FBI analyst who could find digital footprints that most people didn't know they were leaving. "What am I looking for?" "A woman, early 20s, designer, probably freelance, works in Chicago, that's all I have." "That's not much, Jack." "I know, but—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She might have recently come into some money, cash, maybe $5,000 to $10,000. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "What's this about?" "Just— Look, please." It took Marcus 3 days. Jack was in a meeting with investors when his phone buzzed with a message. "Found her. You're going to want to see this." He excused himself, his heart beating faster than it had in years. In his office, Marcus had sent through a file. Jack opened it, and there she was. Emma Claire Bennett, 23. Graduated from Columbia College Chicago 7 months ago. Freelance graphic designer. Current address, a modest apartment in Logan Square. Recent financial activity, a cash deposit of $2,500, followed by another $2,500 3 weeks later. But that wasn't what made Jack's hands shake slightly as he held his phone. It was the employee roster Marcus had cross-referenced. Emma Claire Bennett, junior designer, Morrison Tech, remote position, hired 6 weeks ago. She worked for him. Jack sat down slowly, his mind racing through the implications. She'd been on his payroll this entire time. Every date, every conversation, every moment he'd been falling for whoever she really was. She'd known exactly who he was. Or had she? He pulled up her employee file. The hiring had been handled by HR, routed through the design department head. There was no reason Emma would know the CEO's name or face unless she'd gone looking. Morrison Tech employed over 3,000 people. He made a point of staying out of the spotlight. Jack opened his laptop and searched for Emma Bennett's portfolio. It loaded slowly, a simple website with clean design and careful typography. Her work was good, better than good. There was a sensitivity to it, an understanding of story and emotion that most designers took years to develop. One project caught his eye, a rebranding for a women's shelter. The logo was a door slightly ajar with light spilling through. The tagline, You don't have to be ready, you just have to be willing. Jack stared at it for a long time. This was the woman he'd been talking to, not the leopard print and pigtails, not the stories about exes and Pomeranians. This quiet courage, this careful beauty. But why was she lying? He called Marcus back. The money. Can you trace where it came from? Working on it. The deposits were cash, so it's harder to track. But I've got a lead. Give me another day. The next morning, Marcus called. The money came from a Veronica Ashford. I know who she is, Jack said quietly. Veronica. The real Veronica. He'd met her twice at charity functions, both times finding her cold and calculating in a way that had made him polite but distant. When she'd reached out through a mutual connection, suggesting dinner, he'd been curious more than interested. When she'd cancelled twice, he'd been relieved. And then Veronica had shown up for their third scheduled date, and she'd been nothing like he'd expected, because she wasn't Veronica at all. Jack, Marcus said carefully, what exactly is going on here? I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to find out. Wednesday came. Jack stood outside the Revival Theatre at 6:45, hands in his pockets, watching the street. He'd spent the past 3 days debating what to do with his knowledge. Confront Emma immediately. Wait to see how far she'd take the lie. Walk away entirely. But every option felt wrong except one. Give her a chance to choose honesty. At 7:03, he saw her. She'd dressed simply this time. Jeans, a soft grey sweater, minimal makeup. Her hair fell naturally around her shoulders. She looked nervous. She looked beautiful. She looked for the first time like herself. Emma stopped a few feet away, searching his face. I wasn't sure you'd actually be here. I said I would be. People say a lot of things. Jack stepped closer. I don't. Something passed between them then, a moment of recognition that had nothing to do with names or lies or whatever game they were both playing. Should we go in? Emma asked softly. In a minute. Jack took a breath. Emma. He watched her face drain of color, watched the fear flash across her features before she could hide it. You know. I know your name. I know you work for me. I know Veronica Ashford paid you to be here. He kept his voice gentle, even though his chest felt tight. What I don't know is why you kept coming back. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She didn't run, though he could see she wanted to. I needed the money. My laptop broke and I had this deadline and she offered me... Her voice cracked. It was supposed to be one night, 3 hours. Make you never want to see her again, but you didn't. Didn't what? Run. You were supposed to run. A tear slipped down her cheek. And then you asked about my favorite film and you held my hand and you looked at me like... She couldn't finish. Jack reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he brushed the tear from her face with his thumb. Like what? Like I mattered, Emma whispered. Like you saw me, even when I was trying so hard to hide. The last light of the day caught in her hair, painted her skin gold. Jack had made 1,000 careful decisions in his life, calculated risks that had built his company, his reputation, his carefully controlled world. This felt like none of those things. This felt like falling. I do see you, he said. That's the problem. I've seen you from the beginning. They didn't go to the movie. Instead, they walked, north along the lake where the city lights reflected off the water like fallen stars. The air was cool, autumn settling into Chicago's bones, and Emma wrapped her arms around herself. Jack shrugged off his jacket without a word and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled like him, something clean and woody, expensive but not overwhelming. Emma pulled it tighter, trying not to think about how natural the gesture felt, how easily they'd slipped into this quiet intimacy. I should explain, Emma started, but Jack shook his head. Not yet. Let's just walk first. So they did. Past joggers and cyclists, past couples and families, past all the regular people living their regular lives. For 20 minutes, they existed in a space outside explanation, outside consequence. Just two people walking beside water that had been there long before either of them and would be there long after. Finally, Jack led her to a bench overlooking the lake. The skyline rose behind them, but out here, with the water stretching dark and endless. It was easier to forget the weight of everything between them. "Okay," Jack said, turning to face her. "Now you can explain." Emma took a shaky breath. "My laptop died right before a major deadline. I was already behind on rent, drowning in bills. My friend sent me this bizarre job posting, $5,000 for 3 hours of acting. It sounded insane, but I was desperate." She twisted her hands together. "Veronica told me you wouldn't take no for an answer, that she needed someone to make you stop pursuing her. I thought it would be easy. Show up, be awful, collect the money, never see you again. But I didn't stop." "No, you didn't." Emma's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You were kind. You were curious. You asked real questions and you listened to the answers, even when I was trying so hard to make you not want to." She finally met his eyes. "I told Veronica after the first date that I couldn't do it again. But she threatened me, said she'd make sure I lost my freelance clients, ruin my reputation. And then she offered more money and I—" Her voice broke. "I'm not proud of it, Jack. I needed the money, but that's not why I kept showing up." "Then why did you?" The question hung between them, patient and inevitable. Emma looked out at the lake, gathering courage from the darkness. "Because when I was with you, even dressed like a nightmare and saying ridiculous things, I felt more like myself than I had in months. You made me want to be honest. You made me want to be seen." She turned back to him. "I know that doesn't make sense. I know I was lying the entire time. But the things that slipped through, my favorite movie, my work, the way I see the world, those were real. Those were me." Jack was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the dim light. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Do you know what I do, Emma? What Morrison Tech actually is?" She shook her head, confused by the change in direction. "We build AI systems for creative industries. Tools that help designers, writers, artists do their work better, faster, without losing the human element. I started the company because I was tired of technology that replaced people instead of empowering them." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've been the CEO for 8 years. I've sat across from hundreds of people trying to impress me, sell to me, use me for connections or money or influence, and every single one of them showed me exactly what they thought I wanted to see. Jack, you're the first person in years who didn't know who I was, who talked to me like I was just some guy. Even covered in leopard print and talking about fake exes, you were more honest with me than anyone in my actual life has been in God knows how long." He turned to look at her, and Emma's breath caught at the intensity in his eyes. "That's what I saw, Emma. Not the costume, not the performance, you. Trying so hard to hide and failing beautifully." Emma felt tears threatening again. "I still lied to you. You were hired to lie to me. There's a difference." Jack reached out, his fingers finding a strand of her hair that the wind had pulled loose. He tucked it behind her ear, his hand lingering near her face. "The question is, what happens now?" "I don't know," Emma whispered. "I work for you. I lied to you. Veronica is probably going to destroy me. I've made such a mess of everything." "Or," Jack said softly, "you're a talented designer who got caught in someone else's manipulation, who made the best choice she could with limited options, who, despite everything, showed me more truth than I've seen in years." His hand was still near her face, close enough that Emma could feel its warmth. She leaned into it slightly, unable to stop herself. "I don't know how to fix this," she said. "Maybe it doesn't need to be fixed. Maybe it just needs to be different from here on." Jack's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the gentlest touch. "I'm going to deal with Veronica. She won't threaten you again. And at work, I'll have you transferred to a different department, eliminate any conflict of interest. But Emma," he paused, his eyes searching hers, "I need you to decide something." "What?" "Whether you want this. Not the job, not the money, not whatever obligation you think you have. I need to know if you want me, the real me. Not the CEO, not the guy from the staged dates, just this." He gestured between them, at the small space on the bench where their bodies had unconsciously drifted closer, where their breaths mingled in the cool air, where something unnamed and undeniable had been building since that first night. Emma's heart was hammering so hard, she was sure he could hear it. Every logical part of her brain said this was impossible. Too complicated, too messy, Too soon. But when she looked at Jack, really looked at him without the barrier of lies between them, she saw someone who'd been as lonely as she was, someone who'd been waiting for something real. "Yes," she whispered. "I want this. I want you." The words had barely left her lips before Jack closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, questioning. His hand cupped her face, his other arm sliding around her waist, pulling her closer. Emma's hands found his shoulders, then his neck, fingers threading through his hair as the kiss deepened. It tasted like relief, like truth, like coming home to a place she'd never been, but had been searching for all along. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he said. Not a command, a question, a hope. Emma nodded, unable to form words. They stood, still holding each other, and began walking back toward the street where Jack's car waited. Emma's hand in his, the jacket still around her shoulders, the city lights blurring into watercolor behind her tears. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't pretending to be anyone else. She was just Emma, and somehow, impossibly, that was enough. Emma woke to golden light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the unfamiliar weight of Egyptian cotton sheets. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she felt the warmth beside her, saw Jack's arm draped across her waist, and the previous night came rushing back in waves of sensation and emotion that made her breath catch. They'd barely made it through the door of his penthouse before the careful restraint they'd maintained by the lake had shattered. Clothes shed like old skins, hands learning the geography of each other's bodies, whispered names and gasped promises. It had been tender and desperate and achingly honest, everything the fake dates had never been. Now, in the soft morning light, Emma studied Jack's sleeping face. The sharp line of his jaw softened in sleep, the small scar near his eyebrow she'd traced with her finger hours ago, the vulnerability he only showed when he thought no one was watching. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice, 7 times in rapid succession. Jack stirred, his arm tightening around her. "Ignore it," he mumbled into her hair. But Emma couldn't. A cold dread had already begun settling in her stomach. She reached for the phone. 15 missed calls, 23 texts, all from Veronica. The most recent message made Emma's blood run cold. "I know where you were last night. I know what you did. Call me in the next hour or I make sure you never work in this city again. I have screenshots of you accessing confidential Morrison tech files. I have emails you sent, proposing intellectual property theft. Don't test me, Emma." Emma sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest, her hands shaking. "What is it?" Jack was awake now, alert. "Veronica, she's—" Emma couldn't finish the sentence. The threat was clear. Veronica had somehow fabricated evidence of corporate espionage. It didn't matter that it was fake. The accusation alone would destroy Emma's career before it even started. Jack read the messages over her shoulder, his expression darkening with each line. "She's bluffing." "Is she?" "Jack, you don't know what she's capable of. She hired me to sabotage her own date. She threatened me when I tried to quit. This is exactly the kind of thing she'd do." "Then let her try." Jack's voice had gone cold, in a way Emma had never heard. "I'll bury her in legal action so deep she'll—" "No." Emma pulled away, standing up, searching for her clothes. "You don't understand. Even if it's fake, even if you defend me, the rumor alone will follow me everywhere. That designer who tried to steal from Morrison Tech. No one will hire me. My career will be over before it begins. Emma, I have to call her. I have to fix this." She was pulling on her jeans now, her sweater trying not to cry. Jack stood, wearing only his boxers, looking lost in a way that made Emma's heart crack. "So what? You're going to let her blackmail you? Keep playing her games?" "I don't know. I just—" Emma's voice broke. "I need to think. I need to figure out what to do. The answer is simple. You tell her to go to hell and we deal with whatever she throws at us. Together." "Together?" Emma laughed, but it came out bitter. "Jack, we've known each other for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of lies and performance and 1 honest night. You can't throw your reputation away for that, for me. Don't tell me what I can't do." Jack crossed the space between them, gripping her shoulders gently. "Emma, look at me." She did, and the intensity in his eyes almost broke her. I spent 8 years building walls, he said, keeping everyone at a distance, because it was safer, easier, more controlled. And then you walked into that restaurant looking like a beautiful disaster, and every single wall I'd built started crumbling. You made me feel something again. You made me want something more than quarterly reports and board meetings and the same hollow routine. His hands slid down to hold hers. So no, it's not been long, and yes, it started with a lie. But what we have now, that's real. And I'm not letting Veronica Ashford or anyone else take it away. Emma wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe that love could be simple, that truth could conquer manipulation, that 3 weeks could be enough to build something worth fighting for. But her phone was ringing again. Veronica, always Veronica, pulling the strings. I have to take this, Emma whispered. Jack's jaw tightened, but he nodded and stepped back. Emma answered, putting the phone on speaker so Jack could hear. Emma, so glad you came to your senses. Veronica's voice was smooth, satisfied. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go on 3 more dates with Jack. You're going to slowly pull away, make him lose interest naturally, and then you're going to disappear. No drama, no confessions, no disruption to his life or mine. Why? Emma's voice shook. Why do you care so much? You don't even want him, because he wants what he can't have. Because men like Jack Morrison need to learn that some women are beyond their reach. Veronica paused. And because I can. Because I enjoy watching people dance when I pull the strings. Jack's face had gone white with fury, but Emma shook her head at him. Let her talk. Let her incriminate herself. And if I refuse? Emma asked. Then by tomorrow morning, Morrison Tech's legal team will have evidence of your attempted data breach. Your name will be in every industry newsletter by afternoon. Your parents in Michigan will see their daughter accused of corporate espionage on their evening news. Veronica's voice hardened. I've done this before, Emma. I'm very good at destroying people who disappoint me. You're insane, Emma said. I'm powerful. There's a difference. A pause. You have until Monday to decide. But honestly, darling, I think we both know you don't have a choice. The line went dead. Emma stood frozen, the phone still in her hand. Jack was already pulling on clothes, his movements sharp with anger. She recorded herself making threats, he said. That's admitting to blackmail. We take this to the police, to my lawyers, and she'll release the fake evidence before you can stop her. Jack, she's thought this through. She always does. Then what do you suggest? We just give up? Let her win? Emma set down her phone carefully, her mind racing through scenarios, through options, through possibilities. She thought about the woman who'd hired her so coldly, the woman who'd threatened her so casually, the woman who'd just admitted she enjoyed destroying people. People like Veronica always had one weakness, their own arrogance. No, Emma said slowly, we don't give up, but we also don't fight her the way she expects. What do you mean? Emma looked at Jack, an idea forming that was either brilliant or completely insane. She wants me to push you away gradually, naturally, so you lose interest. What if we do the opposite? I'm listening. What if we go public? Not quietly, but spectacularly. What if you introduce me as your girlfriend at the biggest, most visible event possible? Emma's heart was racing now. She can't release fake corporate espionage evidence about someone the CEO is publicly dating. It would look like a personal attack, like jealousy. It would destroy her credibility, not mine. Jack stared at her. You want to use her strategy against her. I want to call her bluff. She thrives in shadows and manipulation. But she can't operate if we bring everything into the light. Emma took Jack's hand. There's a company gala next week, isn't there? Your annual charity event? Friday night, 500 guests, board members, investors, media. Jack's eyes lit up with understanding. She'll be there. She always is. Then that's where we make our move. Together. Publicly. Undeniably. Jack pulled Emma close, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. You're brilliant. Terrifying. But brilliant. I learned from the best actress I know, Emma said with a sad smile. Myself. They spent the rest of the morning planning, calling Jack's lawyer to document everything, making sure they had backup plans for every possible counter-move Veronica might make. But underneath the strategy, underneath the fear, something else was building. a partnership, a team, something that might actually be worth fighting for. The next 5 days passed in a blur of careful orchestration. Jack's lawyers compiled everything: the recorded phone call, the payment receipts, screenshots of Veronica's threats. They built a case that would protect Emma from any retaliation, legal shields that could be deployed instantly if Veronica made her move. At work, Emma was quietly transferred to the brand strategy team. Her new supervisor, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane, who seemed to understand without being told that this reassignment came from the very top. Emma threw herself into her projects, desperate for normalcy, for something she could control. But the real preparation was happening in the spaces between. Jack would appear at her apartment after midnight with Thai food and strategy notes. They'd sit cross-legged on her worn couch, so different from his penthouse, planning their public debut while stealing kisses between contingency plans. Emma learned that he was terrified of failure, that his father had never forgiven him for choosing tech over medicine, that he'd built his company as much to prove something as to create something. Jack learned that Emma's confidence was hard-won, that she'd spent her childhood feeling invisible next to her golden child brother, that every design she created was an attempt to give other people the visibility she'd craved. They were falling in love in the margins of a battle they hadn't chosen. And then Wednesday came. Emma was in a conference room presenting a rebrand concept when Diane's assistant appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Emma, you're needed on the 43rd floor. Now." The 43rd floor. Executive offices. Jack's floor. Emma's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. She gathered her materials with shaking hands, excused herself, and took the elevator up. The doors opened onto sleek glass and steel, the kind of corporate elegance that made her feel small. Jack's assistant was waiting. "He's in the main conference room. Go straight in." Emma pushed through the heavy doors and stopped. The room was full, the entire executive team, from what she could tell. Board members. And Jack, standing at the head of the table in a suit so sharp it could cut, his expression unreadable. And Veronica, seated near the front, perfectly composed in cream silk, her smile sharp as glass. "Ms. Bennett," Jack said, his voice formal. "Thank you for joining us." Emma's heart was hammering. This wasn't the plan. The gala was still 2 days away. What was happening? "I've called this meeting," Jack continued, his eyes never leaving Emma's face, "to address some serious allegations that have been brought to my attention." No, 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 no. Veronica had moved first. "Ms. Ashford has provided evidence suggesting that you, Emma Bennett, attempted to access confidential company files and share proprietary information with outside parties." Jack's voice was ice, professional. Nothing like the man who'd held her 3 nights ago and whispered promises against her skin. Emma couldn't breathe. She looked at Veronica, who was radiating smug satisfaction. That's not true. I never—" "The evidence is quite compelling," one of the board members interrupted. A silver-haired man with cold eyes. "We take intellectual property theft very seriously, Ms. Bennett." "I didn't steal anything," Emma's voice cracked. "This is a setup. She pointed at Veronica. "She hired me to what?" Veronica's voice was butter-soft. "To work here?" "Yes, I did recommend you for the junior designer position. I was trying to help a struggling young woman. How was I supposed to know you'd abuse that trust?" The room was spinning. Emma looked at Jack, desperate for some sign, some indication that this was theatre, that they were still working together, but his face remained impassive. Closed. "Jack," Emma whispered. "Please." "Mr. Morrison," he corrected coldly. "We're in a professional setting, Miss Bennett." Something inside Emma shattered. He'd chosen his company over her, his reputation over truth. After everything, the confessions, the promises, the plans, he'd decided she wasn't worth the risk. "The evidence speaks for itself," the silver-haired board member said. "I move for immediate termination and referral to law enforcement." "Seconded," another voice added. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. "However," Jack said, and something in his tone made the room go quiet, "before we vote, I think Ms. Ashford should explain how she obtained this evidence." Veronica's smile flickered. "I received it from a concerned source." What source? I'm not at liberty to... Because according to our IT department, Jack continued, his voice still calm, still devastating, the files you claim Ms. Bennett accessed, they don't exist. They never existed. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and an email appeared on the conference room's main display. Emma recognized it immediately. One of the evidence screenshots Veronica had threatened her with. This email, Jack said, claiming to be from Emma Bennett, has metadata showing it was created using an account that was opened 4 days ago. From your IP address, Ms. Ashford, as do all the other pieces of evidence you've provided. The room erupted. Veronica's face drained of color. You can't prove... I can prove all of it. My legal team has been investigating your claims since Monday. They've documented everything, including the $2,500 you paid Ms. Bennett to impersonate you on several dates, and the subsequent blackmail threats you made when she tried to end the arrangement. Jack's eyes were steel now, cutting through Veronica's composure like it was paper. You've committed fraud, blackmail, and attempted to destroy someone's career because I had the audacity to prefer her company to yours. Emma couldn't move, couldn't think. This was the plan. This had always been the plan. Jack had never betrayed her. He'd been setting a trap. Veronica stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I don't have to listen to... Sit down. Jack's voice cracked like a whip. You're not leaving until we've discussed your options. Option 1. You resign from every board position you hold. You publicly apologize to Emma Bennett, and you never speak to either of us again. In return, we don't press charges. Option 2. Veronica's voice shook with barely contained rage. We destroy you the way you tried to destroy her, and I promise you, Veronica, I'm far better at this game than you are. The silence in the room was absolute. Finally, Veronica grabbed her bag. I'll have my resignation to you by end of day. Good choice. She walked toward the door, then stopped next to Emma. For a moment, Emma thought she might say something cutting, something that would leave one last wound. Instead, Veronica just looked at her, really looked at her, and Emma saw something unexpected in her eyes, not hatred, envy. Then she was gone. The board members filed out after her, murmuring amongst themselves. When the last one left, Jack dismissed his assistant and closed the door. Emma stood frozen in the center of the massive room, this cathedral of glass and ambition. Jack crossed to her slowly, like approaching something wild and wounded. I'm sorry, he said softly. I'm so sorry. I wanted to warn you, but I needed your reaction to be genuine. I needed Veronica to believe she'd won. You let me think, Emma's voice broke, you let me think you'd chosen them over me. I know, and I'm sorry. But Emma, I need you to understand something. He took her hands, holding them against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. There was never a choice. There was never a moment when I wasn't choosing you. Everything I did, the investigation, the setup, this meeting, it was all to protect you, to make sure she could never hurt you again. Emma felt the tears finally spill over. I thought I'd lost you. You can't lose me. I'm yours. Completely. Irrevocably. Jack pulled her close, one hand cradling the back of her head. I told you I don't make promises lightly. When I said I wanted this, wanted you, I meant forever. Not just the easy parts, the messy, terrifying parts, too. Emma buried her face in his shoulder, breathing him in, letting herself believe. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the empty conference room 43 floors above a city that had tried to break them both. Finally, Jack pulled back just enough to look at her face. Still want to be my date to the gala Friday? Emma laughed through her tears. I don't have anything to wear. Then we'll fix that, together. He kissed her softly. Everything from now on is together. Together, Emma repeated, and this time she believed it. The next 48 hours felt like living inside a snow globe, beautiful, contained, slightly unreal. Jack took Emma shopping on Michigan Avenue, to boutiques where salespeople knew his name and brought champagne without being asked. She tried on dress after dress, feeling like an imposter in silk and satin until she found it, a deep sapphire gown that made her feel like herself, only elevated. Not a costume, not a performance, just Emma at her most honest. Jack watched her from a velvet chair, his eyes never leaving her reflection in the mirror. That one, he said simply. You said that about the last 3, and I meant it every time. He stood, crossing to her, his hands finding her waist. You could wear anything, Emma, or nothing. I'd still look at you the same way. The saleswoman politely excused herself. Emma turned in Jack's arms, their faces close in the mirror's reflection. What way is that? Like I can't quite believe you're real. She kissed him then, soft and slow, tasting the truth in it. That evening they sat in Jack's home office while he worked through last-minute preparations for the gala. Emma curled in the leather chair across from his desk, sketching ideas for a new project, occasionally looking up to find him already watching her. What? She asked after the 3rd time their eyes met. I'm trying to figure out when exactly I fell in love with you. Emma's pencil stopped mid-stroke. They hadn't said those words yet, had danced around them, implied them, felt them in every touch and glance, but never spoken them aloud. And, her voice came out barely above a whisper. Jack set down his pen, leaning back in his chair. I think it was the Casablanca quote. The way you corrected me without thinking, like the truth of it mattered more than maintaining the character. That's when I knew. Whoever you really were, I wanted to know everything about her. Emma's eyes burned. I fell in love with you when you held my hand. The 3rd date walking through Wicker Park. I'd been trying so hard to push you away and you just held on. I'm still holding on, Jack said quietly. I know. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only exists between people who've stopped pretending. Finally, Jack closed his laptop. Emma, there's something I need to say before Friday. The seriousness in his tone made her sit up straighter. When we walk into that gala together, everything changes. The media will have questions, competitors will use it as gossip. Some people will assume you slept your way into my life. Others will paint me as the CEO who can't separate professional from personal. He ran a hand through his hair. It won't be easy, and I need you to choose this with full knowledge of what it costs. I already chose. No, listen. Jack stood, moving to crouch in front of her chair, taking her hands. I'm not giving you an out. I'm giving you informed consent. Because once we do this, once we're public, there's no going back to quiet anonymity. Your life becomes part of the narrative. Your work gets scrutinized differently. People will have opinions about us, about you, about every decision we make together. Emma studied his face, the worry lines between his brows, the vulnerability he was trying to hide behind pragmatism. You're scared, she said softly. Terrified. Not of them. Of losing you because I didn't prepare you for what this means. Emma slid from the chair to the floor, kneeling so they were eye level. Jack Morrison, listen to me very carefully. He waited. I spent 3 weeks pretending to be someone else, hiding behind costumes and stories and someone else's identity, and it was exhausting, it was suffocating. Being with you, being seen by you, that's the first time I've felt like I could breathe in years. She cupped his face in her hands. I don't care what they say. I don't care who judges or gossips or makes assumptions. Let them talk. As long as at the end of the night, I get to come home to this. To you. To the truth of us. Jack closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. When he opened his eyes, they were bright with unshed tears. I love you, Emma Bennett. Not in spite of how we started, because of it. Because you showed me that the messy, imperfect, complicated things are the ones worth fighting for. I love you too, Emma whispered. Even when you're being an overprotective CEO who stages elaborate boardroom takedowns to defend my honor. Jack laughed, the sound shaky but real. Especially then. He kissed her with the kind of desperation that comes from almost loss, from the razor's edge between having and losing. Emma kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and love and fierce certainty that this right here was worth every risk. They made it as far as the couch before clothes became obstacles and words dissolved into breath and touch. Jack traced the line of her spine like reading Braille, learning the language of her body. Emma mapped the scars on his shoulder, the sensitive spot behind his ear, the way his breath caught when she whispered his name. It was different from their first night, less frantic, more intentional. A conversation conducted entirely in sensation, question and answer, give and take, the slow building of something that felt like forever. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Emma's head on Jack's chest, his fingers drawing abstract patterns on her skin. "Promise me something," Jack said into the quiet. "What? If it gets too hard, the attention, the pressure, any of it, you'll tell me. You won't just endure it because you think you should." Emma propped herself up to look at him. "Only if you promise the same thing." "Deal." She settled back against him, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Outside the windows, Chicago sparkled in the darkness, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to predict. Somewhere in that vast city, Veronica was probably plotting her next move or licking her wounds, or learning nothing at all from what had happened. But here, in this moment, Emma couldn't bring herself to care. She'd spent so long being small, being careful, being whoever the situation required. With Jack, she got to be enormous, messy, completely, unapologetically herself. "Friday's going to be interesting," she murmured. Jack's laugh rumbled through his chest. "That's one word for it." "What word would you use?" He thought for a moment. "Perfect. Friday's going to be perfect because you'll be there." Emma smiled against his skin. "Such a romantic. Only for you." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, already dreaming of the moment when they'd stop hiding and let the whole world see what they'd built from the ashes of deception. 2 days until the gala. 2 days until everything changed. Emma couldn't wait. Friday arrived wrapped in autumn gold and nervous energy. Emma spent the morning at her apartment, trying to work on a design project, but mostly staring at the sapphire dress hanging on her closet door. It looked different here, in her modest space with its thrifted furniture and mismatched dishes, like something borrowed from another life. Her phone buzzed. "Jack. Car picking you up at 6. I'll meet you there. Wanted to give you space to prepare. Also, I miss you already." "Is that pathetic?" Emma smiled. "Completely pathetic." "I miss you too. Nervous? Terrified." "You?" "Same. But the good kind of terrified, like standing at the edge of something worth jumping into." Emma read the message 3 times, her chest tight with affection. "See you soon," she typed. "Don't start the party without me. Emma, I haven't started anything real in years, not until you." She set down her phone, blinking back tears that would ruin her makeup. The car arrived exactly at 6. Not Jack's usual driver, but a woman named Sarah who made kind small talk and didn't pry. The drive downtown felt surreal, watching the city transform from neighborhoods to skyline, from regular Friday night to something glittering and extraordinary. The gala was being held at the Drake Hotel in a ballroom that belonged in fairy tales. Emma arrived to find a red carpet, actual photographers, people in evening wear that cost more than her annual rent. She almost told Sarah to keep driving, but then she saw Jack, standing near the entrance in a tuxedo that made her forget how to breathe properly. He was scanning the arriving cars with barely concealed anxiety, and when his eyes found hers through the window, his entire face transformed. He was at the car door before Sarah had fully stopped, opening it himself, extending his hand. "Hi," he said, and his voice carried everything, relief and desire, and the particular brand of nervousness that comes from caring too much. "Hi," Emma managed, taking his hand, letting him help her out. The cameras went wild. Jack didn't seem to notice. He was too busy looking at Emma like she'd hung the moon specifically for him. "You're stunning," he said quietly, for her ears only. "You're not so bad yourself." He tucked her hand into the crook of his arm, and they walked the red carpet together. Photographers shouted questions. "Mr. Morrison, who's your date? Is this official? What's your name, miss?" But Jack just smiled and kept walking, whispering commentary that made Emma laugh despite her nerves. "The guy in the purple tie runs a tech blog dedicated to hating everything I do. The woman with the clipboard is from the Tribune and will definitely spell your name wrong. And the photographer on the left is just here for the free champagne. How do you know that?" "He's my cousin." Emma laughed, and the cameras caught it. The moment of genuine joy, unguarded and real. Inside, the ballroom was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, tables draped in fabric that shimmered like water. 500 of Chicago's most powerful people, all dressed to intimidate. Jack's hand tightened on hers. "Stay close. Where else would I go? They made their way through the crowd, Jack stopping every few feet to shake hands, introduce Emma, navigate the social choreography with practiced ease. Emma watched him work, fascinated by this version of Jack Morrison, the CEO, the philanthropist, the man everyone wanted a moment with. But every few minutes in the spaces between conversations, he'd look at her, touch the small of her back, lean close to whisper, "Still okay," and Emma would nod, meaning it more each time. She met the silver-haired board member from the conference room, who was surprisingly warm now that she wasn't accused of corporate espionage. She met Jack's head of marketing, a fierce woman named Angela, who pulled Emma aside and said, "About time someone made him smile like that." She met investors and clients and people whose names she'd only seen in business journals. And then she met Jack's parents. They appeared near the dessert table, his mother elegant in navy silk, his father distinguished in a way that suggested he'd been handsome once and resented no longer being so. "Jack," his mother embraced him warmly. "We were wondering when you'd surface." "Mom, Dad, this is Emma Bennett." He drew her forward, pride evident in every syllable. "Emma, my parents, Catherine and Robert Morrison." Catherine's smile was genuine, reaching her eyes. "Emma, what a lovely name. Jack mentioned you'd be joining him tonight." "Mentioned?" Robert's tone was drier. "He's talked about little else for 2 weeks. Apparently you're a designer?" "I am, yes." Emma fought the urge to shrink. Brand identity mostly. Visual storytelling. "Storytelling?" Robert tested the word like it might be dangerous. "And you work for Jack's company?" "Different department," Jack interjected smoothly. "No conflict of interest." "Of course not." But Robert's eyes were calculating. "And how did you two meet?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Emma felt Jack tense beside her. They'd prepared for this, rehearsed several versions of the truth that omitted the worst parts. But standing here, in front of his father's skeptical gaze, Emma found herself exhausted by the careful editing of their story. "We met through a misunderstanding," she said clearly. "I was hired to impersonate someone else on a date with Jack. It was supposed to be temporary, just a job I needed desperately. But he saw through the performance, he asked real questions and wanted honest answers. And somewhere between the lies I was paid to tell and the truth I couldn't help sharing, we fell in love." The silence was absolute. Jack's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Catherine broke first, her laugh surprised and delighted. "Well, that's certainly not the sanitized corporate romance I was expecting." "Catherine," Robert warned. "Oh, Robert, don't be such a stuffed shirt." She turned to Emma, eyes bright. "You told him the truth, the real messy truth. Do you know how rare that is in our world? How many people Jack has dated who've only shown him what they thought he wanted to see?" "Too many," Jack said quietly, looking at Emma. "Until her." Robert studied them both for a long moment. Finally, he extended his hand to Emma. "Welcome to the family circus, Ms. Bennett. I suspect you'll fit in better than most." It wasn't quite approval, but it wasn't rejection either. Later, after dinner and speeches and the carefully choreographed segments of the evening, the band started playing. Real musicians, not a DJ, playing songs that actually required skill. Jack led Emma to the dance floor as they began a slow jazz number, something old and romantic that Emma half recognized. "Your dad hates me," Emma murmured as Jack pulled her close. "My dad hates everyone. The fact that he shook your hand means he's practically adopting you. Your mom was nice. My mom is thrilled I'm finally dating someone with an actual personality." Jack spun her gently. "You were incredible, by the way. Telling the truth like that. I thought we'd agreed on the sanitized version. I got tired of editing us. If people are going to judge, they might as well judge the real story." Jack pulled her closer until there was no space left between them. "Have I mentioned lately that I'm completely in love with you? Not in the last hour, at least. Unacceptable. Emma Bennett, I am completely, irrevocably, inconveniently in love with you." Emma laughed against his shoulder. "Inconveniently? You've ruined my carefully ordered life. I can't concentrate in meetings. I leave work early. I smile at my phone like a teenager. It's a disaster. Want me to fix it?" "God, no." Jack pressed his lips to her temple. "Don't fix a single thing." They danced through 3 songs, lost in each other, barely noticing when other couples joined them on the floor. In this moment, in this crystalline bubble of music and movement, Emma felt completely present. Not worried about the future, not haunted by the past. Just here now, held by someone who knew all her truths and chose her anyway. When the music finally slowed to something softer, Jack leaned down to whisper, "Want to get out of here? What about your hosting duties? I've done my time. Besides, I have somewhere I want to take you." They slipped out through a side entrance, Jack's hand firmly holding hers, both of them giddy with escape. The car was waiting, and Jack gave Sarah an address Emma didn't recognize. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a building on the river, all glass and modern angles. "What is this?" Emma asked. "Come see." Jack led her inside, past a doorman who nodded knowingly, up an elevator to the top floor. He unlocked a door and guided her into a penthouse apartment that was completely empty except for floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river and the city beyond. "Jack? I bought it last week," he said, nervous suddenly. "I know we haven't talked about living together. I know it's fast. But I kept thinking about how you looked in my space versus your space, and I realized I want a space that's ours. Not mine, not yours. Ours. Something we choose together, build together." He turned to face her. "This is just an option, no pressure. But if you wanted, we could make it home. Together." Emma walked to the windows, looking out at the city that had almost broken her, that had introduced her to Jack, that held their entire complicated story in its sprawling geography. "Together," she repeated softly. "Always." She turned back to him, this man who'd seen her at her worst and her best, and every messy iteration between. This man who'd fought for her, protected her, loved her without conditions. "Yes," Emma said, "let's build it together." Jack crossed to her in 3 strides, lifting her off her feet, spinning her once before kissing her with all the contained desire of an evening spent being proper and restrained. Emma kissed him back, pouring everything into it, gratitude and passion and the particular sweetness of choosing someone who'd already chosen you. They made love right there on the empty floor, the city lights their only witness, urgent and tender and achingly honest. No more performances, no more pretending. Just 2 people giving themselves completely to the beautiful, terrifying truth of loving someone else. Afterward, lying wrapped in Jack's tuxedo jacket because they hadn't thought to bring blankets, Emma traced the line of his jaw. "I was terrified when I walked into that restaurant," she said quietly. "I thought I was just taking a job. A weird, uncomfortable job that would save me financially. And instead I found you, found us, found myself, maybe." She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. "Best $5,000 I ever earned." Jack laughed, the sound warm and full. "Best $5,000 Veronica ever spent on her own destruction. Do you think she's okay?" "I think she's Veronica. She'll land on her feet, probably on someone else's back." He pulled Emma closer. "But that's not our problem anymore. We did our part. The rest is up to her." They lay there for a long time, talking about paint colors and furniture and whether they needed a dining room table or if eating on the couch was an acceptable adult lifestyle choice. They talked about everything and nothing, weaving the ordinary details of shared life with the extraordinary feeling of having fought for the right to build that life together. As the night deepened and the city's lights blurred into stars, Emma felt something settle in her chest, not the frantic happiness of new love, but something steadier, stronger, home, not the building, not the city, him, this, them. 3 months later, the gala felt like a lifetime ago. Emma and Jack had moved into the Riverview penthouse, filling its empty spaces with furniture they chose together, a couch deep enough to get lost in, bookshelves that held his tech manuals and her design volumes, a kitchen table where they ate breakfast, and argued lovingly about whether cereal was an acceptable dinner. Work had settled into a rhythm. Emma's designs were gaining attention, her portfolio growing stronger with each project. No one questioned her merit anymore. The whispers had faded, replaced by respect she'd earned through late nights and brilliant work. But tonight was different. Tonight was Morrison Tech's annual holiday party, and this time Emma wasn't sneaking in as someone's secret. She was walking in as herself, Jack Morrison's girlfriend, yes, but also Emma Bennett, senior brand strategist, the woman who'd redesigned their entire visual identity and increased brand recognition by 40%. She'd earned her place at this table. Still, her hands shook slightly as she fastened her earrings. The dress she'd chosen was elegant, but understated. Deep emerald that brought out her eyes, nothing that screamed for attention. She didn't need to anymore. Jack appeared in the bathroom doorway, already dressed, watching her with that expression he wore sometimes, like he was trying to memorize her. "You're staring," Emma said to his reflection. "I'm appreciating. There's a difference." "Is there?" He moved behind her, his hands settling on her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder so they were both reflected in the mirror. "3 months ago, you stood in a ballroom full of strangers and told my father the messy truth about us. Do you remember what I thought in that moment? That I was insane. That you were the bravest person I'd ever met." Jack pressed a kiss to her neck. "And that if you could be that honest, I could be that brave." Emma turned in his arms. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see. Come on, we're going to be late." The party was held at a new venue this year, a renovated warehouse in the West Loop, with exposed brick and string lights that made everything look like a movie set. Emma and Jack arrived to applause and greetings, their relationship now an accepted fact of the Morrison tech ecosystem. Angela from marketing grabbed Emma immediately. "Thank God you're here. The photographer wants a team photo and refuses to start without our brand lead. You redesigned our entire visual identity in 3 months. You're definitely the brand lead." Angela dragged her toward a group of designers, all of whom greeted Emma with genuine warmth. This was her team now, her people. The photo happened, then another. Then suddenly Emma was swept into conversations about upcoming projects, spring campaigns, the rebrand she'd been secretly hoping they'd let her tackle. It took 20 minutes before she realized she'd lost track of Jack entirely. She found him near the stage talking with Diane and several board members. When he saw her, his face lit up in that way that still made her breath catch. "There you are," he said, extending his hand. "I was just about to start without you." "Start what?" Jack just smiled and stepped onto the small stage, tapping the microphone to get everyone's attention. The room gradually quieted, hundreds of faces turning toward him expectantly. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Jack began, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent Emma couldn't quite identify. "This year has been transformative for Morrison Tech. We've grown, evolved, taken risks that paid off in ways we never anticipated." Emma's heart started beating faster. Something was happening, something unscripted. "But more than our quarterly earnings or market position, what I'm proudest of is the culture we've built. A place where people can be honest, where vulnerability isn't weakness, where showing up as your authentic self isn't just accepted, it's required." His eyes found Emma in the crowd. 3 months ago, I stood in front of many of you and exposed someone's attempt to manipulate and blackmail. It was necessary, but it was also terrifying, because it meant acknowledging that I'd been deceived, that I'd fallen for someone while she was lying to me, and that somehow, impossibly, that had become the most real thing in my life. The room was utterly silent now. Jack stepped down from the stage, moving through the crowd until he stood directly in front of Emma. "Emma Bennett walked into my life dressed like a disaster and talking about imaginary Pomeranians, and I should have run. Every logical part of my brain said run." He took her hands. "But I didn't. Because underneath the performance I saw someone real, someone brave enough to do what she had to do to survive and honest enough to feel terrible about it." Emma's eyes were burning. "Jack, what are you—" "Shh, I'm not done." His smile was gentle. "You showed me that the best things in life are messy, imperfect, that sometimes the people worth keeping are the ones who come into your life the wrong way at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. And that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections fit perfectly with yours." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket. Emma's heart stopped. No, he wasn't. He couldn't be. Jack lowered himself to one knee. The room erupted in gasps and whispers, and at least one person saying, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. "Emma Claire Bennett," Jack said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You've ruined my perfectly ordered life in the best possible way. You've made me laugh and question everything and feel more alive than I've felt in years. You've shown me that being vulnerable isn't weakness. It's the only way to really connect with another person." He opened the small box he'd pulled from his pocket. Inside, a ring, simple, elegant, with a stone that caught the light like captured starlight. "I don't want to spend another day pretending I'm complete without you. I don't want to build a life that doesn't have you in every part of it. So I'm asking right here in front of everyone we work with, and everyone who's been on this wild journey with us, will you marry me? Will you let me be your truth, the way you've been mine?" Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the overwhelming rightness of this moment, public and messy and witnessed by hundreds of people, exactly like their entire relationship had been. "You're insane," she whispered. "Is that a yes? You're proposing at a work party. I'm proposing where we built our life together, where you proved you belong, where everyone can see that I'm choosing you publicly, permanently, without hesitation." Jack's smile turned slightly uncertain. "But Emma, I really need an answer because my knee is killing me, and I'm starting to sweat through this very expensive suit." Emma laughed, the sound breaking through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Yes," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, you ridiculous, romantic, impossibly brave man, yes." Jack stood, sliding the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then he was kissing her, and the room was cheering, and Angela was crying openly, and someone started playing music, and Emma thought, this is it, this is what it means to be completely terrifyingly happy. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, both smiling like idiots, Jack pressed his forehead to hers. "No more secrets," he whispered. "No more hiding. No more pretending," Emma agreed. "Just us, however messy that is. However messy." They danced their first dance as an engaged couple right there in the middle of the warehouse with fairy lights overhead and their colleagues surrounding them. Someone made a toast. Someone else made a joke about HR policies. Angela announced she was already planning the wedding and would not be accepting feedback. But through it all, Emma kept looking at Jack, her Jack, who'd seen her at her worst and proposed anyway, who'd made her lies into truth and her shame into something worth celebrating. Later, much later, when they were finally alone in the car heading home, Emma studied the ring on her finger. It caught the streetlights as they passed, throwing small rainbows across the car's interior. "When did you buy this?" she asked. "The day after the gala. I've been carrying it around for 3 months, waiting for the right moment." And the right moment was a work party? The right moment was when I couldn't wait anymore, when keeping it secret felt more dishonest than shouting it from the rooftops. Jack pulled her close. "We started with a public lie. I wanted to propose with a public truth. Does that make sense?" It made perfect sense. Everything about them made sense in its own strange way. The wrong beginning that led to the right ending, the lies that revealed truth, the performance that became real. "I love you," Emma said simply. "I love you too. Future Mrs. Morrison." "Future Mrs. Bennett Morrison," Emma corrected. "I'm keeping my name. I'd expect nothing less." They rode in comfortable silence, watching Chicago stream past the windows. The same city where Emma had once been desperate and afraid, where she'd agreed to a terrible job that led to the best thing in her life. Sometimes the wrong choice leads to the right place. Sometimes the person you're pretending to be reveals who you really are. Sometimes $5,000 and a leopard print blouse change everything. Emma smiled, leaning into Jack's warmth, the ring heavy and right on her finger. No more performances, no more pretending, just truth, just love. Just them choosing each other every single day forever. Some love stories begin with fate, others with careful planning, shared interests, perfect timing. Theirs began with a lie. $5,000, a leopard print blouse, a woman desperate enough to pretend, and a man lonely enough to see through the pretense. It should have been a disaster. It should have ended before it began. Instead, it became the most honest thing either of them had ever experienced, because sometimes the masks we wear reveal more truth than we intend. Sometimes being seen at our worst is the only way to be loved at our best, and sometimes the messiest beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Emma had walked into that restaurant terrified of being discovered. She walked out discovered, devastated, and somehow more herself than she'd ever been. Jack had spent years building walls to keep people at a distance. Emma demolished every single one, not with force, but with the quiet courage of choosing honesty over safety. They built a life from the wreckage of deception, a home from the ashes of manipulation, a love that refused to be anything less than entirely, completely, courageously real. No more performances, no more hiding, just two people who found each other in the worst possible way and decided that was exactly the right way after all. If this story touched something in you, a memory, a hope, a dream you thought you'd lost, leave a comment. Tell me what resonated. And if you want more stories like this, stories that remind you love is messy and beautiful and worth every risk, hit subscribe. I'll be here, telling the truth about what it means to choose love even when it's terrifying.